All right, so you're on a mission to decode all things itchy dog, right?
Yeah.
You want to help your furry friend find some relief. And you've brought us a mountain of info on Apoquel, this new drug Zenrelia, and honestly, everything in between.
And you're in the right place because we are diving deep today. Itchy skin, it's one of the most common reasons we see dogs, so trust me, you are not alone in this.
That's reassuring to hear
Yeah.
that so many people are dealing with this. Before we even jump into the solutions, though, what are the main culprits behind this itchy dog epidemic? What are we even dealing with here?
Well, just like with us humans, allergies are a big one. Fleas, those are a classic. Environmental allergens, those are tricky. And then you've got food allergies. Those can be sneaky little culprits. The key takeaway here is you got to know what you're dealing with before you can treat it effectively.
Right, you don't want to just mask the symptoms. You want to address the root cause, just like in human medicine.
Exactly.
So trip to the vet, get that diagnosis locked in, and then we talk solutions.
100%.
And speaking of solutions, Apoquel, it's like the buzzword in the dog world these days.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem to consider it the gold standard. But before we even get into pros and cons, how does Apoquel actually work? What's the mechanism there?
So imagine your dog's immune system as like this complex alarm system, right? When those allergens, whatever they may be, when they trigger it, those alarm bells, they go off. And what happens? Inflammation, and of course that unbearable itch that your poor pup is dealing with. Now, Apoquel comes in, and it acts like this clever little saboteur. It goes in, and it silences those specific alarms, the ones we call JA pathways, to stop the itch right at the source.
So it's not just covering up the problem, it's actually going in and tackling those underlying alarms.
You got it.
That's impressive. I did see that's supposed to be really fast acting too. Like, how fast are we talking?
Okay, get this. Within 4 hours, just 4 hours, you might already see your dog scratching less.
Wow.
And for many dogs, we see a significant reduction in itching within a month, often around 50%. It's pretty remarkable how quickly it can work.
That is fast. Definitely faster than a lot of the human allergy meds I've tried. But, and I think you know where I'm going with this, with any medication, especially a powerful one, there are going to be some downsides, right? What are the potential drawbacks to Apoquel?
Yeah, so the biggest one for a lot of owners, it's the elephant in the room, it's the cost.
Of course.
It can get pretty pricey, especially if your dog needs it long term. And the other thing to remember is it's not for every dog. It's only for dogs over a year old. And for dogs with certain health conditions, it might not be suitable at all. You really have to have that conversation with your vet.
Okay, so effectiveness, check, but with some important caveats to keep in mind. Which brings us to Zenrelia, this new medication that keeps popping up. I know you said it's also a J-kick inhibitor, similar to Apoquel, but in your research, you found some pretty compelling advantages that Zenrelia might have, right?
Absolutely. So like we said, both Apoquel and Zenrelia, they both target those same inflammatory pathways, and they're both approved for itchy dogs who are at least 12 months old. But here's where it gets really interesting and where Zenrelia starts to stand out. First off, it tends to be easier on the wallet, in some cases significantly cheaper than Apoquel, especially when you look at the long-term costs. And then there's the dosing.
Okay, tell me more about that, because I know that can be a big one for people.
It can. With Apoquel, you start off having to give those pills twice a day, which, let's be honest, not every dog is thrilled about. Zenrelia is just once a day.
Oh, wow, that's way easier.
Right. Much more convenient for you and probably easier for your dog to stomach, literally.
I love that. So convenient for you, easier on the dog.
Yeah.
You also mentioned something about how it might provide more consistent relief, too. What's that all about?
So with Apoquel, some dogs experience what we call rebound itch. Basically, when they stop taking it, the itching comes back with a vengeance.
Oh.
Yeah, it can be super frustrating. But early data on Zenrelia suggests it could be a smoother ride for your pup with less of that rebound effect.
So potentially fewer of those frustrating flare-ups.
Fingers crossed.
That's amazing. But I do remember you mentioning a pretty significant safety concern with Zenrelia, something about vaccines.
Yes, and this is a big one. The FDA, they issued a warning about Zenrelia potentially interfering with vaccines.
Okay, how so? What's the connection there?
It's like hitting the snooze button on the immune system, just temporarily. So when your dog gets vaccinated while on Zenrelia, those vaccines, they might not be as effective, and that could put your dog at risk.
Yeah, that's definitely something you don't want to mess around with.
Yeah.
So are we talking like no vaccines ever if your dog is on Zenrelia? Or is there a way to work around that?
No, there's definitely a way to make it work. It all comes down to timing. Your vet will recommend something called a washout period. Basically, you pause the Zenrelia for a set amount of time before and after any vaccinations, kind of like a buffer zone. We're talking anywhere from 28 days to 3 months, depending on the specific vaccine. This is a crucial conversation to have with your vet to make sure your dog stays safe and protected.
Got it. So definitely weigh the risks and benefits. Have that open conversation with your vet. No skipping vet appointments just because there's a new medication on the market.
Exactly.
Now, aside from Apoquel and Zenrelia, I know there's a whole lineup of other options out there. We're talking injections, we're talking special foods, even some natural supplements that people are curious about. Let's start with the injections because I'm seeing Cytopoint mentioned a lot in these articles. Tell me more about these Cytopoint injections. What's the deal with those?
Okay, so Cytopoint is interesting because it works a little differently than Apoquel and Zenrelia. Instead of those small molecule JAK inhibitors, it uses something called monoclonal antibodies.
Monoclonal antibodies. Okay, now I feel like we're getting really sciencey here. Break that down for me. What does that even mean?
It sounds fancy, but basically, these monoclonal antibodies, they're like guided missiles, they target a very specific part of the itch pathway. In this case, it's a molecule known as IL-31, sometimes called the itch cytokine.
The itch cytokine. Wow, they really named it what it is, didn't they? So instead of silencing a bunch of alarms like with Apoquel, it's like taking out the head honcho of the itch response.
That's a great way to put it. And because it's so targeted, the effects of a single Cytopoint injection can last a while, usually 4 to 8 weeks. So for some dogs, this can be a great option, especially those who haven't had success with the Apoquel or Zenrelia. Maybe they had side effects or it just didn't work for them. Cytopoint offers another path forward.
Okay, longer lasting relief, potentially a good fit for dogs who aren't responding to the other medications. That's promising. But I have a feeling there's a but coming.
There is. You know how it goes, there's always a trade-off. In this case, the main drawback with Cytopoint is, you guessed it, the cost.
Right, back that.
It tends to be even pricier than Apoquel, especially since you need those injections every few weeks. So it might not be feasible for every owner, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's always a balancing act, isn't it? Effectiveness, convenience, and of course, cost. It's a lot to weigh. Now, another option we see a lot, and I feel like most people are at least somewhat familiar with this, is corticosteroids. I know I've taken my fair share in my life.
Right.
So what's the story with corticosteroids for dogs? Are we talking about the same kind of thing?
We are. Corticosteroids, they're like the heavy hitters of inflammation control. You're probably familiar with prednisone. That's often what's prescribed for dogs. And they work fast and they work effectively to reduce that itching. But, and this is a big but, long-term use of corticosteroids, it can come with some risks, some pretty serious ones. We're talking potential side effects that can cause a whole other set of problems for your pup.
Yeah, I've heard some honestly kind of scary stories about dogs on long-term steroids. Increased thirst and hunger, even some behavioral changes. Not good. So I'm guessing long-term corticosteroid use, it's not ideal.
Definitely not. That's why it's typically used as a more short-term solution, often to provide some quick relief while waiting for other medications to kick in, or if there's a specific short-term issue going on. It's like a Band-Aid.
Okay, so a temporary fix while you're addressing the root cause or waiting for a more sustainable solution to kick in. Which actually, that's a perfect segue to another option that you mentioned, and that's cyclosporine. Is this one of those medications that takes a little longer to show results?
It is. Cyclosporine, it's an oral medication like Apoquel and Zenrelia, but it works in a totally different way. It's what we call an immunosuppressant. So basically, it dials down the immune system's overall reaction to those allergens. So it takes a few weeks to see the full effects because it's not just about blocking a specific pathway, it's about modulating the immune system's response. But once it does kick in, it can be really effective for long-term management of that itch.
Okay, so patience is key with cyclosporine, but it could be a good long-term strategy if you're willing to wait it out. Are there any other advantages to cyclosporine? Cost effectiveness, maybe? Because I know that's always a big factor.
You know me so well. That is a big plus for cyclosporine. It is generally more affordable than Apoquel, especially because there are generic versions available, which is always a win for your wallet.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears a bit, I want to talk about something that I know so many of us humans reach for at the first sign of a sniffle, and that's antihistamines. What's the deal with those for our canine companions? Are those safe and effective for dogs too?
They can be, but it's a little hit or miss with dogs. Antihistamines work by blocking histamine, which is one of the key players in those allergic reactions.
Right.
The good news is they're pretty readily available over the counter, and they're generally affordable, so that's a plus. The not so good news is that they often don't work as well for dogs as they do for us.
Really?
Yeah, they often don't pack enough punch as a sole treatment, especially for dogs who are dealing with chronic or severe skin allergies. They might help a bit, but they're not going to be that miracle cure.
So maybe worth a shot for those mild occasional itches, but not the ultimate solution for those dogs who are just constantly uncomfortable.
Exactly. And on that note, always, always, always consult your vet before giving any human medications to your dog.
Oh, absolutely, that's a given.
Dosages are different. What's safe for us might be toxic for them, so always better to be safe than sorry.
Wise words. Now, I also want to touch on something that I feel like I've been hearing more about in the human world lately, and that's allergy shots. Is that a thing for dogs too? Can you give a dog allergy shots?
You can. For dogs, it's called allergen-specific immunotherapy, or ASITE for short. And it's similar to what humans go through, but obviously it's tailored to those specific dog allergens. Basically, they get a series of injections that contain tiny, tiny amounts of whatever they're allergic to. So it might be pollen, it might be dust mites, mold, whatever those triggers are. And the goal is to slowly, over time, desensitize their immune system. It's like building up a tolerance.
It's like training your dog's immune system to say, oh, it's you again, never mind, no need to freak out this time.
Exactly. And it's not a quick fix. It takes time, often a few months, to really see those full benefits. And it can be a bit of an investment financially, but allergy shots are often considered the most effective long-term solution for those environmental allergies. So if your dog is really struggling and you're committed to a long-term solution, allergy shots might be worth exploring.
Okay, so potentially a long-term solution, but definitely requires some patience and might require a bit of a bigger budget up front. Now, we've covered medications, we've talked about injections, but what about those specialized dog foods that I always see advertised? The ones that are specifically for skin allergies. What's the deal with those dermatological diets?
Okay, so those diets, they're specially formulated to minimize the chance of an allergic reaction and to really support healthy skin. They often feature ingredients your dog hasn't encountered before, these novel proteins, or they'll use hydrolyzed proteins. So basically, those are proteins that have been broken down into smaller pieces, so they're less likely to trigger your dog's immune system.
So it's like hitting the reset button on their system with these new proteins, making those proteins less irritating, right?
Exactly. But of course, like most things, there's a catch. These diets can be pretty pricey, and they do require a prescription from your vet.
Right, because of course, anything good for our furry friends seems to come with a hefty price tag. Now, last but not least, I want to touch on those good fats we always hear so much about, omega-3 fatty acids. I know they're good for us humans, but what about for those itchy pups? Can they really make a difference?
They can. Omega-3 fatty acids have natural anti-inflammatory properties, so they can be helpful in managing those skin allergies for sure. They're generally very safe and can be given as a supplement, either by sprinkling some fish oil on their food or using a specifically formulated supplement. But, and I think you might be sensing a theme here, they're unlikely to be a silver bullet on their own, especially for dogs who have more severe itching.
So more of a supportive sidekick than the main superhero in the fight against itchy skin.
Exactly. Think of it like this. They might provide some extra support, maybe even reduce the amount of other medications your dog needs, but they shouldn't be relied upon as the primary treatment for those really uncomfortable pups.
Got it. It's incredible how many different options there are, and it seems like there's no one-size-fits-all solution, is there?
There really isn't. It's about understanding your dog's specific needs, and that's where that open communication with your vet is so, so crucial.
So what are some of the key factors people should consider when they're discussing these different treatment options with their vet? What are those key questions to ask?
First and foremost, how severe is that itching? Is this a seasonal thing, or is this something your dog battles year-round? And how much is it impacting their quality of life? Is it just a mild annoyance, or is it keeping them up at night, making them miserable?
Right. Makes sense that a mild, occasional itch wouldn't call for the same approach as a dog who's constantly scratching and just miserable.
Exactly. And then there are those practical considerations. What's your dog's age? Do they have any other health conditions we need to consider? What's your budget like? How comfortable are you giving medications at home? Would you prefer pills? Would you prefer injections? Are you open to maybe exploring dietary changes? It's about finding the best fit for your individual dog and your family.
It truly is. And that open communication with your vet, it sounds like that's paramount throughout this entire process. They're your trusted partner in helping your furry friend find some much-needed relief.
100%. It's a team effort, and together you can navigate those options and come up with a plan that works best for your dog.
It feels like we've covered a year's worth of vet appointments in the last few minutes. My brain's a little fried.
It's a lot to process, for sure, but that's why having that trusted vet by your side, it's so important.
100%. They're the experts who can connect the dots and say, okay, based on everything we just talked about, this is the path that makes the most sense for your dog. But you know me, before we wrap up this deep dive, I got to say, something's been tickling my brain this whole time.
Oh, I was wondering when you were going to bring this up.
It's just that, all these incredible resources you've shared, they focus understandably heavily on managing those symptoms, right? Like, how do we make that itch stop? Which, don't get me wrong, it's crucial for your dog's comfort. I'm not downplaying that at all.
Of course not. A comfortable dog is a happy dog, and sometimes, yeah, managing those symptoms, that is the priority.
100%. But it does kind of make you wonder, what if there's a whole other layer to this? What if, by focusing solely on calming that storm of symptoms, what if we're missing an opportunity to address what's causing those allergies to flare up in the first place?
Now you're thinking like a true deep dive aficionado. I like it.
Is this what they call foreshadowing in the podcasting world? Because you did mention something about the canine gut microbiome in one of the articles. Is that what you're hinting at here?
It's definitely an area of growing interest, and for good reason. Think about it. The gut microbiome, all those trillions of bacteria and other microorganisms living in your dog's digestive tract, it's like a whole ecosystem in there.
And we're learning more and more about how important that ecosystem is for our own health, right? Like, gut health is linked to everything. Our immune systems, our moods, even our weight. Is it the same for our dogs?
It's exactly what researchers are uncovering. A balanced and diverse gut microbiome. Just like in humans, it's essential for a healthy immune response in dogs. And when that balance is disrupted, which can happen for all sorts of reasons, it can lead to all sorts of issues, including those over-the-top immune reactions we see with allergies.
So are you saying there could be a direct link between an imbalanced gut and these itchy skin woes so many dogs are experiencing?
It's definitely a strong possibility, and it's a connection that we absolutely need to explore further. Imagine if, in addition to all the medications and treatments we talked about, what if we could develop therapies that specifically target and nurture a healthy gut microbiome in dogs? What if we could actually reduce their susceptibility to these allergies in the first place?
Okay, now we're talking about some next level stuff. It's like shifting from just treating the symptoms to actually like rewiring the system from the inside out. That would be huge for so many dogs and their humans.
Game changer. And while more research is definitely needed, it's super exciting to think about the possibilities. Imagine a future where, in addition to managing your dog's itchy skin, you're also giving them gut-healthy treats or supplements to proactively promote a balanced microbiome, potentially even preventing those flare-ups from happening in the first place. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
I love that. And honestly, I have a feeling a lot of dogs wouldn't object to a few extra tasty treats, even if it's in the name of science.
Exactly. But in all seriousness, this is a really exciting frontier in veterinary medicine. The more we learn about that intricate gut-immune connection, the better equipped we'll be to help our furry friends live their best, itchiest-free lives.
Okay, I am 100% on board with this gut health deep dive. It's like we've just scratched the surface, no pun intended, of a whole new world of possibilities.
You could say we've only just dipped our toes in the proverbial gut microbiome. There's so much more to explore, so much more to understand.
Well, and lucky for us, that's what the deep dive is all about, right?
Exactly. We take those initial sparks of curiosity, like your question about the gut microbiome, and we dive deep, we look at the research, the latest findings, the potential breakthroughs, all to help you make the most informed decisions about your dog's health.
I love that. It's like we started with a simple question about itchy dogs, and now look at us. We're unraveling this whole fascinating connection between the gut and the immune system.
And that's the beauty of it all. It's about connecting those dots, understanding the bigger picture, and getting excited about those possibilities that lie ahead.
And speaking of those possibilities, you mentioned some pretty cutting-edge research that's happening right now in this whole realm of canine gut health. What are some of the things that scientists are really digging into these days?
So one really fascinating avenue is something called fecal microbiota transplantation, or FMT for short. And essentially, it involves transplanting fecal matter from a healthy donor dog into the gut of a recipient dog with an imbalance in their microbiome.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me they're essentially doing like poop transplants in dogs now?
Yeah. It sounds a little out there, I know, but it's actually based on really solid science. Remember how we talked about the gut microbiome being like an ecosystem? Well, sometimes that ecosystem, it needs a little help to get back on track. And by introducing a healthy, diverse population of microbes from a donor, it can potentially reboot the system and help restore that balance and alleviate symptoms in the recipient dog.
That is wild. Is it working? Are they seeing promising results with this FMT in dogs?
It's still relatively early days. There's definitely a lot more research to be done. But those initial findings, they're really encouraging. Some studies have shown that FMT can be effective in treating things like chronic diarrhea and inflammatory bowel disease in dogs, which those can both be linked to gut microbiome imbalances.
So if it can help with those conditions, it really makes you wonder if it could also hold potential for dogs with allergies. Is that something that researchers are looking into?
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the big questions on the horizon right now. Could FMT, by restoring a healthy gut microbiome, could it also help to modulate the immune system and reduce those allergic reactions that lead to itchy skin?
It's mind-boggling to think about, but also super exciting. I can't wait to see what they discover. And on that note, I think it's a good time to shift gears a bit and talk about, what can you do today? While we wait for those groundbreaking discoveries to emerge, what are some practical steps that our listeners, dog owners out there, can take right now to start supporting their dog's gut health? So much to think about. It's like we've gone from simply soothing the itch to potentially rewiring the system, like you said, from the inside out. Incredible. But those breakthroughs, they take time, and in the meantime, our itchy pups need some relief. So what can our listeners do right now, today, to start supporting their dog's gut health? What are some simple steps they can take at home?
There are actually some surprisingly simple yet really powerful things you can do to nurture that gut microbiome. And it all starts, as so many things do, with diet. Just like with us humans, what goes into your dog's body has a direct impact on those gut microbes.
Makes perfect sense. But I think a lot of dog owners out there, myself included, might be wondering, what does a gut-healthy diet for a dog even look like? Asking for a furry friend who may or may not have stolen a few too many treats off my plate in her day.
Well, first and foremost, I always say have that chat with your vet, especially if you know your dog has a history of food sensitivities or allergies. But in general, a really great place to start is with a high-quality, balanced diet. Look for those whole food ingredients, real meat, veggies, and then you can even get a little adventurous and consider adding some fermented foods for an extra probiotic boost.
Okay, hold on. Fermented foods, like for dogs, is that a thing?
It is. It's becoming more and more popular. Think plain, unsweetened yogurt. Just make sure it's xylitol-free. That's really
Oh,
important.
source.
Kefir is another good one. And you can even find some fermented veggies that are dog-friendly. Start with small amounts, see how your dog tolerates it, but those can be great for introducing those beneficial bacteria.
Interesting. So we're really talking about like food as medicine here. Love that. What else can we be adding to our dog's routine to give their gut that extra support?
Probiotics are huge. You've probably heard of those for humans, but they make them specifically for dogs too. Basically, they're supplements that contain live beneficial bacteria, those good guys we've been talking about, and they can help to just replenish and repopulate the gut with those good microbes.
It's like giving their gut a helping hand.
Exactly. There are tons of different dog-specific probiotics out there these days, so definitely talk to your vet about which one might be right for your pup's needs, their age, their breed, all of that.
Got it. Now, I know from personal experience that stress can really do a number on our own guts. Is there a connection between stress and gut health in our dogs too?
100% yes. Dogs, they experience stress just like we do, and it can absolutely manifest in their gut. Think about changes in routine. Those can be really stressful for dogs. Loud noises, fireworks, thunderstorms, those are big ones. And then, of course, you've got separation anxiety, which so many dogs struggle with. All of those things, they can disrupt that delicate balance of the gut microbiome.
So really, all the more reason to prioritize our dog's emotional well-being, not just for their mental health, but for their gut health as well. What are some things we can do to create that more gut-friendly, low-stress environment for our furry pals?
A lot of it is really simple, surprisingly so. Providing a predictable routine, that's huge for dogs. They thrive on routine.
They really do.
Plenty of exercise, getting those zoomies out, that's essential. And then don't forget about mental enrichment. Things like puzzle toys, training sessions, even just giving them a job to do. That can go a long way in reducing their stress levels. And of course, never underestimate the power of some good old-fashioned TLC.
Cuddles, belly rubs, ear scratches, all in the name of good gut health. I can get behind that. Now, before we wrap up this incredible deep dive into the world of itchy dogs and their amazing guts, any final words of wisdom for our listeners? What do you really want them to take away from all of this?
We've covered a lot of ground today, but I think the most important message I want to leave people with is this. You have the power to be a proactive advocate for your dog's health. Don't be afraid to talk to your vet, to ask those questions, even if you think they sound silly, and just stay curious. The more you know about your dog's individual needs, the better equipped you'll be to help them live their best, itchiest free life possible.
I love that. It's such a powerful message. So we've gone from decoding those medications to really unraveling the mysteries of the canine gut, and it all started with your desire to help your itchy pup. Knowledge is power. That's what we say here at the Deep Dive. And with a little bit of curiosity and a whole lot of love, you can help your dog find relief and thrive. So until next time, happy scratching in moderation, of course. And here's to happy, healthy guts for all our furry friends.